Hello everyone and welcome to Position Specific and welcome back to the Coaching Journey 2 with an under-15s youth development phase team in the USA. So we're up to week 7 now and what we've got in store for you is a game review of our first game back with the boys against Utah Avalanche. We've got session 6 to run through with you and then we've got a game plan for Park City Red Wolves which will be a different kind of test for us and the boys than we're used to, but I'll explain that kind of as we get towards that point of the game plan. But let's dive straight into what we've got going for you in this week's Coaching Journey 2. Okay, so week number 7, okay, like I mentioned, we've got a game review against Utah Avalanche, so we're just kind of going to look at the good and the bad of the attacking organisation, obviously, which was a big part of the game plan. We're going to have a look at the defensive organisation in terms of the high press, which was obviously a big part of the game plan as well. And we're going to look at the good and the bad of attacking transition because that's kind of what really hindered us a lot in the game. And I'll give you some examples of that as well and why it's important to obviously try and control those transitions. But we'll get to that in a second. Session 6 is all about playing out from the back. So we've got a practice around playing out and around the opposition, and we've got technical practice for that, and then we've got practice 2, which is playing out around, and a skill practice for that as well. And then, like I mentioned before, we'll have a game plan for our next game against Park City Red Wolves, which will have another focus of attacking organisation and defensive organisation, but we'll obviously talk about how important the transitions are, especially after our first game against Utah Avalanche, which you'll see in a second. Okay, so let's dive into our game review against Utah Avalanche. As I mentioned in week 6 of the coaching journey, in terms of the game plan for this game, this was going to be a real tough game for us. These guys have been playing together all the way through the high school season. They didn't have their boys go to high school, so they've been playing together, doing tournaments all over the country. And these are a decent team in and around Utah. And like I mentioned before, they're probably up with us and one of the other teams around here, which are probably the top 3 teams in this state. So this was going to be a tough game, especially kind of with the lead up that we've had and the lead up that they've had to the game and stuff. But this is why you challenge yourselves, and it was important for us to go straight into a game like this to challenge the boys and kind of get them ready for that kind of playing from the high school seasons with lots of different other players, lots of different coaches, lots of different styles, and trying to get back into our kind of style of play and the way we want to play. But it was a tough game, but it was good for the boys to get out there and have a run. So, but let's get into it. So the first thing we're just going to talk about was the systems of play, which was a positive matchup. So as I mentioned before, we kind of knew going into it what they were going to kind of set up as. We knew that they were going to be very similar to us in terms of when they're attacking, they were going to be a 4-3-3, so that obviously would make us adjust to a 1-4-2-3-1, just to adjust to their attacking midfield players and the dynamics of their midfield. And then obviously they would do the same when we were attacking in our 1-4-3-3, and they would match us up with a 1-4-2-3-1 as well. So a positive matchup. And obviously, like I mentioned before, guys, like systems of play, as soon as the game's rolling and people are moving, then those systems change anyway. But that's kind of the basis that we always look for, and then we can go from there. So the first kind of performance problem we're going to have a look at is the attacking organisation. And we mentioned in the game plan that one of the parts of the game plan was related to a game we had against these guys in November last year, where we were not as smooth as we usually are in the playing out from the back kind of or playing out from the goalkeeper kind of phase of the game in attacking organisation. So we kind of wanted to make sure that we were a little bit smoother on that this time, and we talked about playing around and playing through and opportunities to be able to do that. And we talked about in the game plan how we wanted our centre backs, that because of the way that they pressed in terms of how they let the ball go into the full backs and then their wide forward would press the full back, we wanted to make sure that our centre backs were switched onto that. So if they did play the ball into the full back, they either carried the run on to clear the space for us to go back and across the other side of the pitch through our goalkeeper, or if they could play it into the fullback and then drop off and create some space for the fullback to either switch it through our defensive midfield player out to the goalkeeper or the other centre back, or whether they could step in with our fullback could step in with it and switch it themselves. And then we obviously talked about opportunities, because their wide forward is always looking to go and press the fullback, opportunities to play through into our attacking midfielders and even into our number 9 as well. So there was parts of it that were really good, which I'm going to show you, and there's parts of it where it could improve in these areas as well. But let's have a look at some of those issues that we came up against, and obviously some of the good parts as well. We'll start off with some of the good parts that we were talking about in terms of playing out. So this is the first one. So as you can see here, if I just pause it there, their wide forward is really narrow. And if you look at the position of our fullback, who's a little bit lower in this situation, which is sometimes a really good position when an opposition are doing this in terms of the way the wide forwards are actually waiting to go and press our fullback. If they take up a little bit of a lower position, then it can be a little bit interesting for the wide forward in terms of how close they start to the fullback because of that lower position. Usually, a conventional position for a fullback would be up and around the coaches that you can see there in the picture. But again, as you can see, is in that position of that narrow kind of compact position and is ready to go. And this is actually really good from our centre-back if I play it on. So as you can see there, so that touch there that our centre-back's just taken has kind of effectively fixed that wide forward to his position. And the wide forward has now thought, oh, hang on a minute, he's not going to play to the full-back. There's a possibility he could play through now. So he's kind of, and then obviously it helps when he falls over and he slips, but because of the change of direction, because of the touch that the centre-back took in terms of being able to fix him into that position, was really good. And then obviously that gives you then the opportunity to play into the full-back and then progress in the pitch. And obviously if we could just hold on to that one there, that would have been a real good progression into the opposition's half. In terms of our playing out targets of getting into the opposition half in a control state of play, but good defensive transition press, and then obviously we've won the ball back anyway, and then we do manage to keep it in this area of the pitch when we get hold of it on the second time here, and then a good attacking transition here. Look, so just getting control, keep making sure we get those 2-3 passes, and then we're in control in the opposition's half and looking to create an opportunity to obviously try and get an on goal. Didn't quite work out this time, but a good little chance to get into the opposition's box here and not quite worked out. So good little bit of play there and good progression in the pitch. So this one comes on the transition, so a long pass which gets cut out, really good from our centre-back here because he's got lots of space to go forward, but he keeps the possession, goes back to the goalkeeper. Brilliant pass from the goalkeeper here in terms of straight into the full-back. Just pause it there. Talk to players all the time about obviously looking at opposition players and where opposition players are, and instead of playing the nearest person to you, can you miss them out and go to the next one if your structure's right, just to create more distance and give the opposition bigger problems in their press. And then obviously a good little bit of play here from our fullback. Probably our wide forward should make a little bit of space, but it actually works out as he good little bit of individual play and then slots him in. And then from here we're just looking for a little bit more quality. Like it's not actually a bad pass. But we're not quite got across that front centre-back, and then obviously we've not quite been able to get on the ball in the penalty area or create a chance on goal. But again, really good in terms of after that getting into a bit of a defensive structure there as well. So the parts that could be better, and if I'm completely honest, this happened a lot in the game, especially after the first 20 minutes. The first 20 minutes we were really on it, really doing well, and then we conceded a bit of a sloppy goal, which I'll show you later on in the transition performance problem. And then from there it kind of was a bit of an uphill battle, and we started to do a lot of this kind of stuff after the first 20 minutes. But as you can see here, so again, now this is a little you can see now, so the wide forward's a little bit wary of the ball going into our fullback, so he's holding his position a little bit more compact and narrow. So for me here, if our centre-back takes another touch towards him and fixes him again and then slides in our full-back, we could go down the sides in that. But this is actually a really good pass from the centre-back into our number 9, and I'll just pause it there because as you can see there, he's actually not under too much pressure. But we always talk to players about the body shape and trying not to, when they're receiving a pass from a centre-back here, especially our centre-forward, when he was receiving that pass there, not trying to be square on where the defender can get contact on you and then cause you a little bit of an issue. We always try to get them to receive side on and receive with that front foot under pressure, just to create a little bit more space between the defender and the ball. But as you can see here, defender gets good contact, a little bit of a sloppy touch and gets it caught under himself, but then obviously that gives them a chance to win the ball back and then stay in our half and attack us in our half as well. So, and that was part of the game plan we talked about as well. So another one from transition here in terms of when we win it back. And obviously we get on the ball. We actually do really well to win it back here in this bit. We actually keep the ball well, going back to the centre-back, using our overload, going back to the goalkeeper, and then obviously trying to and playing from here. Now this is a little bit of one here. I'll just pause it here when it goes in now here, okay? And this is something that I'll show you in a second actually in session 6, which was an attacking organisation playing out session. The opportunity for this attacking midfield player now to either go into goalkeeper or into opposite centre-back and out the other side of the pitch is probably the best option. He hasn't seen that, which is fine, which then he obviously bounces it back to the centre-back, and now the centre-back here now has got a perfect chance to play back to the goalkeeper and then go out the other side of the pitch. But just gets caught in two minds a little bit, tries to turn on it, plays in the full-back, and obviously we get caught in a little bit of no man's land here and caught in the press, and then we were lucky to escape this one, and they made a mistake, and obviously we get control of the ball again. But we had lots of moments like that which were really difficult in the game after the first 20 minutes, and it was for me it was a little bit like we weren't quite looking at the other side of the pitch. So when you play out from your goalkeeper, as soon as the first pass moves to either one of the centre backs, then obviously all the opposition moves. So we always talk to the players about, look, can you work their number 9? Can you work the number 9 with the 3v1 you've got against him with your goalkeeper and your other centre back, and force the play across the pitch as quick as possible? And even if that's another pass on that side of the pitch, can we then utilise the space that we've created on the other side of the pitch? And we were a bit too kind of down one side-ish in this game, especially when we played out from the goalkeeper, or even like we've just seen then a couple of moments in the transition. So that's something that we've got to address and try and use the space and switch the play a little bit more, which fits nicely into session 6 that I'll show you in a second after this. Okay, so moving on to the next part, which was defensive organisation and the performance problems we had in there. And obviously, like from the game plan, as you can see in that graphic there, the idea was that we were going to go for a full press on the opposition, and we were going to full press from central area. So our 10 was going to step onto one of their centre-backs. One of our defensive midfielders in that 2 and the 1 was going to step on to the defensive midfield player, and then one of our centre-backs was going to step in from the defensive line and kind of and full press in that ideally, and obviously leave that 3v3 on the defensive line. Now what we usually do here, and I'll show you in the clips that we've got as well, what we usually do is so for example in that graphic there, if the goalkeeper plays to the red number 4, obviously we've got the 9, our centre forward, the white number 9 on the other centre back, so our number 10 will jump onto that centre back receiving the ball. Our opposite, so our white number 6 there has come from the red number 10 onto their defensive midfielder, and then the opposite side centre back steps in onto their midfielder that we've left. So whichever way the ball goes, we do the opposite players to press, just so that there's not there's not our nearest on the same side. So our centre midfielder on the nearest side isn't stepping forward, and then our centre back on the nearest side isn't stepping forward, just creating a gap where if they go long, they've got a huge gap to be able to play into. We didn't quite get that right in the first 10-15 minutes. We still cause a little bit of an issue, but I'll show you exactly what I mean now. So we'll start with the what we could do better on this one in terms of the high press, and I'll just pause it at those moments. So as you can see here, if I pause it there, so as you can see, our number 10's jumped onto their centre-back who's on the ball. Their defensive midfielder's currently in a free position, and as you can see there, both our defensive midfield players have gone to jump onto the defensive midfield player. The one nearest in the picture here is the one that should have gone, and then our centre-back on this side of the pitch should go onto their midfield player. And as it worked out, it worked out all right, because our defensive midfield actually ended up dropping. But we had a lot of these moments in the game as well, where they actually went long into their centre forward. And as you can see here, our centre back's not tight to him. Obviously, a little bit of confusion in the press because our other centre backs actually stepped out on the wrong side. But anyway, we weren't tight enough to him, and as you see here, our centre back he just goes, then drops, and then obviously he's got loads of space to turn, and that just gets them into a position where they can attack and get into our half of the pitch, which you can see there. So a little bit of confusion in the press, and then obviously not getting tight enough to the number 9 on the long ball. But positive was that we did force them into that long ball from the press, and they didn't quite play through as they played over us instead. Another one of could be better. So again, goalkeeper's in possession here in terms of like a little bit of a transition, rolls it into the centre back. Good from our number 10 here, who puts the pressure on, puts him under a lot of pressure. You'll see here again, it's the same side midfield player as the ball who's pressing their defensive midfield player, and it should be the opposite. And as you'll see here, our centre back on the same side goes into him as well, because it ends up going into their attacking midfielder just here now. which is there. Look, so he's got a little bit of space. Our centre-back comes into shot there, look, now, so he's putting him under pressure. Now, if that centre-back on the opposition had played into that space that our centre-back had left, then we could have been in a little bit of trouble. As it worked out, we managed to win the ball back anyway, and it's not bad from attacking transition in terms of keeping the ball as well, and obviously trying to forge attacks in there. So even though we didn't quite get it right, it still worked out when we were able to get good possession, good control in their half of the pitch. And got a free kick from that as well. So the last one I'll show you is where it actually works really well. And obviously as this clip plays out in terms of the organisation just to win it back. And again, a good little bit of attacking transition here where we managed to keep it, and a little bit of quality on this pass as well, and could have maybe created a bit of a chance of getting into their penalty area as well. But the last one I'll show you was actually when we actually fixed it and got it right. So again here looks like the same clip, but it's not. So same centre-back gets on the ball. Number 10 has jumped, and as you can see there, just coming into shot on the right hand side of the screen is our midfielder from the opposite side. So he gets there, and you'll see our centre back coming into shot now. There, look, so our centre backs come onto their attacking midfielder. We're nice and narrow and compact, and we do a real good job here of winning the ball back and doubling up. And as soon as we win it back as well, real good little bit of attacking transition where we keep it, and we're not too eager to go forward. We manage to keep it, get control, manage to get it on the other side of the pitch as well, and then we're in a good position to be able to go and attack and be able to go and try and create a chance in the opposition's half as well. So that was a real good example of the press there. Great little run as well from the midfield player there who doesn't quite get on the end of it. But again, like a real good example of our press and how we managed to get it right in the end, and how we managed to actually cause a problem and get instead of before where it was a little bit confusing. We managed to get control of the ball in the opposition's half and keep possession of it rather than being a little bit disorganised and not quite there. But again, a good example there of obviously not quite pressing, but having that defensive structure and then winning it back and having a good bit of attacking transition. And like I mentioned, the first 20 minutes of the game, we were absolutely on it, and we were doing really well. And we were doing really well in all phases of the game. And then, as I said, like when we conceded the first goal, which was a real sloppy one, which I'll talk about in a second, then it started to be a little bit of a tough game for us. But the last one I'm going to show you in terms of the performance problems, and this was the major one for me and a major one for the coaches, was the attacking transition. And you saw little elements of it there where there was good moments of pressing, good moments of attacking transition where we kept it and got control, but we just had too many moments where we do well in terms of defensive transition, defensive organisation, and then we'd get hold of the ball, but then we just wouldn't keep it. And that can be a real issue, guys, when you're playing against top teams or good teams, because they can really hurt you through that. And you don't want to give opposition teams too much time in control and in possession. And when you're playing against this type of team that we're playing against today in terms of the level, then it's really important that when you do get the ball, you have those moments where you control it and you get them to drop it back into their defensive shape, and you see what you can do and see what you can create. But if you're constantly winning it and giving them back, then one, you can end up in a real difficult chaos situation where you're constantly in between your structures, and obviously then there's the idea of you constantly giving the ball back to the opposition who've got good players and they can hurt you. So these were the little moments that we had constantly in the game, which was probably our downfall. We ended up losing the game quite heavily. It was 4-0 in the end, which was quite difficult for us, but little moments like this. So we've got a good defensive structure. We forced them into a little bit of a long ball. Could get hold of that one. Don't kind of put it into. And I know he's kind of trying, but he's put it into area again. Gets another chance to control it. Doesn't. Heads it straight to their player. Third chance, kicks it straight to their goalkeeper. Listen, and you get moments like that all the time. And it's just kind of trying to get players to calm down and try and get control of it, and then try and keep it. Another moment, and very similar moment kind of here as well, is like where one of our players wins possession. I'm just going to show it there here now. So he's won possession there. He's actually got a little bit of time and space, and I can see what he's trying in terms of a forward pass straight away, but he doesn't really need to. He probably could dribble out of that situation and keep it for us, and especially in this area of the pitch where we're defending a little bit lower, it's really important to keep the ball and get control of it. Otherwise, if you give it straight back to the opposition, they're in your half and got an opportunity to get into your penalty area just like we would try. So again here, look, pass not quite right and giving it away. And then again, we get another chance here when our fullback gets control of the ball. So he gets control of it, does well, finds a midfield player there, loads of space, can travel, just tries to force this one a little bit. on his weaker side, where he probably could just keep it coming this way and keep it playing again, giving it back to the opposition in our half of the pitch. Another moment here, so this is actually the goal, so we're actually in possession here. Always talk to centre-backs as well about like always having your body shape right so that you can play the other side of the pitch whenever the ball's on your side. So our centre-back here, where the ball's about to go to, probably could be a little bit deeper and probably could have a better body shape to play back to our goalkeeper, but he kind of gets a little bit tied up here, look. Where he ends up kind of dribbling, not quite getting it right, gives it away. Annoying bit about this is we win it back again there, and we probably, if a particular player on it could dribble back into that space behind him and play to the goalkeeper, then we're in control of the situation. Doesn't, probably looking to get control and go forward, because obviously there's a little bit of psychological side of it, a little bit of panic sets in here, losing it in this area and winning it back straight away, loses it again, and then we just don't recover. And as you can see here, centre-back doesn't quite get back across, and by that time it's too late, centre-forward's in, and it's a nice finish. So we just had loads of those moments throughout the game where we were doing really well in terms of defensive transition, defensive organisation, and then obviously not keeping the ball, not getting control, and not getting back into our structure and being able to play, and it just ended up kind of us winning it and giving it them back straight away. So, and again, like as against a team like this at this level, that can be quite difficult for you, and that's the big lesson that we learned in this particular game. But having a look at the metrics and obviously the targets that we set ourselves within the game model, and you can see how that reflects as well there. So as I said, like we started the game really well, and for the first probably 30 minutes, even after conceding the first goal, we actually were doing quite well in attacking organisation. But as the game went on, we obviously, like in attacking transition, giving the ball away as much as we got it, then obviously your attacking organisation dips as well. So we've got lots of obviously areas to grow in here. Plus side of it is that, like I said before, like we were actually quite good in defensive transition and defensive organisation, even though we were probably 20% off our target. But like I said before, it's the attacking transition and ultimately obviously getting into attacking organisation was the ones that hurt us the most in this particular game. But for us, again, doing these metrics and these scoring systems is really good. We're actually looking at a better way to break it down, so that we can get more information out of this as well. But even this information here now, obviously watching the game back, gathering this information, it just helps you create kind of like the messages that you give to your players, and obviously it helps you shape your working week in terms of your training and what you need to work on. And stuff like that. So for us, like if you've got opportunities to be able to film your games and got opportunities to be able to watch them back, like we've just found in terms of the power of analysis, because analysis is really powerful in terms of like not just for players in terms of improvement and development, but for you as for coaches as well. It's really, really important. And if you can do something like this where you've got targets to try and hit, and you've and you can watch the game back, and you can do the metrics in terms of gathering the data and then putting the data down somewhere like this. This is brilliant for you as a coach, like I mentioned before, to shape your week, and at the same time it's good for the players to kind of help their understanding of where they need to improve. So from this, we talk to the players massively about getting control and attacking transition. Obviously, there was little areas of attacking organisation where we could have switched the play more, and we could use the space on the opposite side of the pitch, obviously, and that's the playing around bit. Defensive transition, defensive organisation, we were quite happy with. Obviously, once we organised the problems that were in defensive organisation, but the attacking transition was the killer for us in terms of doing well, winning it back, and then giving it straight back to the opposition as well in that chaos state, rather than getting control. So that was the message that we drove to the players, and we've had this before in games, we've had this team with this team before, where they were real good at winning it back, but they're not holding on to it when they won it back. So that's something we've had a focus of that for a long time. So this was nothing new, but again, it's a good chance to remind them that, look, if you're going to play well in these games and you're going to play well for long periods of time, your attacking transition has to be absolutely spot on. But this is what the metrics give you, and the targets give you, and it's great for reviewing your games. Okay, so let's have a look at session 6, which was all around attacking organisation, playing out and playing around, which from the previous game and some of the stuff we've just reviewed, this was nicely timed in terms of what we thought the players really needed to be working on. So a reminder of our game model in the 4 phases. Okay, so obviously attacking organisation, defensive transition, defensive organisation and attacking transition. And obviously, like in this session that we're about to do and I'm about to show you, we obviously, like most sessions you'll do anyway, you'll have a focus, and then when you get into kind of the skill or the game part, then most of the other parts of the session comes out anyway, and most of the other parts of the game model come out anyway. As soon as you add opposition to it, and you kind of get into those parts of it. But we are working on attacking organisation, so obviously we're looking at shape, support and supply. We're in the playing out process, so we're looking to progress into the attacking half of the pitch. And I'll talk about how we use that target and that 50% target of getting into the opposition half of the pitch, and how you can use it in your training sessions as well. But just quick reminder in terms of attacking organisation and in terms of obviously our playing out. So obviously the three key words there are shape, support and supply. This particular session we're going to have more of an emphasis on supply, because we're looking to play around the opposition, and especially from that last game that we just reviewed as well, we're really keen on obviously playing around, but obviously trying to play around on the opposite side of the pitch to where we draw the opposition. So switching play and playing around, and ways to switch play are really important in this part, in this practice, from that game as well. So, and obviously trying to play over the halfway line 50% of the time. So just a reminder of kind of the language. So obviously shape, looking to get into shape 3 to 5 seconds into the correct shape, and create that +2 to control possession of the ball. Obviously support, which happens in all parts of it anyway, so supporting angles are beyond, beside and below to win the space against your mark or the opposition units. And then obviously our main focus today of supply and looking for opportunities to play through, around, or even beyond the opposition at speed and with quality. And obviously, even again, like I mentioned before, even though our focus is going to be around, you'll still get the other parts as well. Especially in in one of the particular practices we're going to do, you'll still get opportunities to play through. Maybe not too much of the playing over, but I'll talk to you about that when we get into it anyway. So. Okay, so let's have a look at the first practice, which was a technical practice, and the one that I'm going to show you on this particular practice plan, we just adapted slightly in terms of, and that was, the adaptation was literally so we could go quickly into the skill/game practice that we planned as well. So I'll talk to you about that in a minute. But effectively, what we were going to do is we were just going to play in terms of playing out from the goalkeeper, and we're going to set up against some mannequins, and we're just going to run through our kind of 5 ideas around link passes to get the ball from one side of the pitch to the other side of the pitch. So I always talk to players about, if you were to draw a line down bang down the centre of the pitch, and obviously you split the pitch into 2 vertical halves, then obviously getting the ball from one vertical half to the other vertical half, and obviously the different ways that you can do that. And we try and do it in these 5 kind of patterns, or like I mentioned before, these ideas of how we can get the ball from one side of the pitch to the other. Because like I mentioned before, as soon as the ball's rolling into one of your centre-backs, now whether it stays on that side of the pitch for another pass, obviously the opposition all shift over. So then it's a real opportunity to utilise that space that we've created on the opposite side of the pitch, and obviously getting the ball to the opposite side of the pitch is really key. So like I said before, we were just going to work through 5 patterns, and this is how we're going to work through them. So we were just going to work in terms of like playing out from the goalkeeper, moving the ball across the other side of the pitch. In this particular practice, you see the ball going into the coach and then back into the players, who will work it back to the goalkeeper. What we did was and then obviously they'll work in the opposite direction, as the video says then, but what we did was we set up 4 goals just 10 yards over the halfway line, so the players played into the little goals, then we'd play a pass back into them and they'd work it back to the goalkeeper, and we did it that way to move on to the next practice quickly. And I actually wanted to work with the defensive midfielder a little bit in terms of his supporting kind of actions and his role within in the team as well, and the reason for that is that he's brand new to that position. In terms of saying brand new, he's been in that position for just over a year now, and defensive midfielder is massively a specialist position in our eyes, and we're doing a lot of stuff around position specific stuff for our individual player model, which we'll get into in later on in the coaching journey. But so I just wanted to work with him around that, so that's why we adapted the session as well. So, but we're using just over half a pitch, so 60 by 70 area size. We're using 8 players. We actually had 16 players, so we ended up doing 2 teams, and I'll show you in a second when we get onto the video of the training session. We actually did 2 teams where one team kind of worked, they ran through the pattern, then the other team ran through the pattern, and then we'd move on to the next one. We did 8 minutes. We actually did 10 minutes because there was five patterns, five ideas, and we did 2 minutes on each one, and then moved on to the next one. So we got through this in literally 10 to 15 minutes in terms of the technical practice. But let's have a look at the players doing it live, and I'll kind of show you the setup. Okay, so the first one I'm going to show you in terms of what we're looking at is, so this was actually out of the 5, this was pattern number 3, so this is playing the ball into the full-back and then creating some space for him to go back to the goalkeeper and across the other side of the pitch. So again, if you think back to, I'll just pause it there as the centre-back gets on the ball now, so if you think back to our game kind of plan in terms of against the Utah Avalanche team we just played against. I'm talking to the centre-backs about, look, if you're playing to the full-back, can you carry your run on to create the space so we can go back to the goalkeeper, or can you drop off and give an option for the full-back to play back to you, or then give him the option to play across the other side of the pitch. So this was actually the one where they carry the run on. So as you can see here, the centre-back's carrying the ball, just going to play into the full-back, carry the run on to take the number 9 away, back into the goalkeeper who slid across the pitch, and then we go across the pitch, and then this is the opportunity now to play forward. So you can either play into attacking midfielder there and link it out to the full-back, who then scores in the goal, or the attacking midfielder could turn and play. Again, so as the ball comes back in, so we just, and as you can see here, I'm just dictating it a little bit so I can get our defensive midfielder on the ball now to kind of work the patterns and understand where he can go and support and where he can go and play. But this is obviously now it's playing the opposite side since we worked it back to the goalkeeper. Again, into full-back, into the goalkeeper, across the other side of the pitch. And then once it gets to here now, and as you can see our defensive midfield player there, just moving on the opposite diagonal to where the ball is, just to create that space now for the centre-back to either play into attacking midfield players or travel with it, fix somebody, play into full-backs or even into the wide forward. Or the number 9. And what we found with that diagonal movement is it just gives the opposition attacking midfielder just a little problem to think about whether he stays with you or he edges to go and press the centre-back. If he edges to go and press, obviously that leaves up a free, our defensive midfield player as the free player. But from here, he's got an option. He can either play into attacking midfielder as it's just gone there, who can link it out, not quite the best pass, or he can play into the full-back, and then either of them two can either turn and play into the small goals. Ball comes in again, always playing to the defensive midfielder because they're not involved in the first part. And like I said, just getting him understanding now. So when he goes into full-back, going in supporting, getting the ball off the full-back, where's your options in terms of playing back to the centre-backs again? Can we work it on the other side of the pitch? And then work it out the other side. So that was kind of how we did it in terms of pattern number 3, in terms of like what we did in terms of working the ball around. And again, it's sometimes as well, if you've got a new team to 11v11, working over these distances is good as well, because it just gets them used to playing the ball across bigger distances and playing on the other side of the pitch. But next one I'm going to show you is pattern number 5. So this was centre midfield player to centre back. And again, if you can think back to, and I'll just pause it in now. So if you can just think back to one of the performance problems we had in attacking organisation in the game that we've just had against Utah Avalanche. This was kind of that sloppy moment we had where the centre-back played into attacking midfielder player who ended up bouncing the ball back. Ideally, we could have done with him doing something like this, where he receives it, plays to the opposite centre-back, and then we utilise that space on the other side of the pitch. And then obviously try and create opportunities to go and attack down this side of the pitch again. But same principle again, so playing to the little goals, play it back into the players again so they can work the ball around. Again, good little play in the air from the defensive midfield player, getting on the ball from the centre-back into the full-back. As soon as it goes back to the goalkeeper, then we work in the opposite direction, which you should see just now. Okay, and again here, so a little bit of movement, a little bit of a double movement. Talk to the attacking midfielder players about shaking the marks off if they're man marked, coming in, getting it, playing it into opposite centre back if they're still man marked and they can't go forward, and then playing it across the other side of the pitch. So, like I mentioned before, I'll just pause it there. We do talk to the attacking midfield players. Like I said again, this is all ideas. We do talk to the attacking midfield players about, can you get off the shoulder of the midfield player that's marking you? Can you get in between opposition defensive lines and attacking midfield lines? If they can't, then can they come and get it off the centre backs? Can they outplay 1v1? Talking about that 1v1 back pressure and the brilliant basics all the time. And then obviously that option of playing to the opposite centre back and trying to utilise that space on the other side of the pitch. So from there, we took that into a skill practice, and the skill practice was just all about kind of, can you or can we do those patterns or those ideas up against opposition in a 6 versus 8? Again, if you've got the chance to do 11v11 on a full pitch, then that's the best option to go with every time. And I love working all these scenarios in 11v11, but like I said, most of you in a similar scenario to we are, not having that, you can't carry that amount of players in a grassroots squad. So unless you can get another team to kind of come and do these practices with you, then obviously you usually end up doing a practice like this, which is 8 versus 6. But what we did is we just set up again. It was just over half a pitch. So I know this picture shows here that the goals are on the halfway line. We used goals 10 yards over the halfway line, and the reason for that was, I'll just pause that video there. The reason for that was, like, if you think back to our target in the game model of getting over the halfway line 50% of the time. So what we did was, like, each time we did 5-minute blocks. So each time we did a 5-minute block where we started from the goalkeeper, or even if we let it play out in transition, then we just gave the boys opportunities to get over the halfway line and then obviously play into a little goal, which would simulate a pass through to one of the teammates. But if they got over the halfway line, then that was a point, and we'd kind of give them 10 balls and say, like, look, if you got over the halfway line, obviously each time they got over the halfway line, they scored a point. And then you get a score out of 10 kind of thing. But again, like, real straightforward, 8 versus 6. So the white team are trying to play into the goals on the halfway line. If the red team win it, they can go and score in the main goal. Obviously we're looking for the white team to get over the halfway line and then score in the little goals as well. And what we did is, and I'll show you as well, is we actually worked through a couple of different presses that we come up against in terms of what the red team do and how the red team set up and kind of where our free players, and a little bit similar to what you see there in terms of the 9 and 10 pressing and who's the free player. So we went into a little bit of that as well, which I'll get into. But real straightforward practice, and then we just kind of played with some of the starting positions where we either started from the goalkeeper, and we started from having our own throw-in in our own half, or opposition having a throw-in in our half, or even the Reds in possession, and that could be in normal possession, or it could be in a corner or a free kick or a throw-in or whatever, a set piece, etc, etc. What we did do as well is, like, if we had success in terms of, like, the first ball where the whites played out over the halfway line, played into the goals, I would play another pass into the Reds so they get an opportunity to attack as well. Because like I mentioned previously, in sessions like this, it can sometimes, if you're having real success at playing out, and obviously it is an 8 versus 6, you've got a +2 overload. If you're having real success, then sometimes the defending team don't get on the ball, so it's important that you give them a ball to try and go and forge some attacks and stuff. So like I said before, it's a little bit more than the halfway line. So this was probably it's probably 65 by 70 size area. We used 14 players. And we played blocks of 2 to 3 minutes, or blocks of 4 minutes, and we did that for about 20 minutes. So we played about 4 or 5 blocks of that, and obviously played 15 to 20 minutes of this particular practice. But let me show you some of the highlights from this practice and kind of when it worked well. So the first one we're going to look at, and again, like, obviously we've worked through 5 patterns, so all we're looking to do is see if those 5 patterns can come out against opposition. And this was pattern number 3, which I showed you. So this is full back to goalkeeper in terms of, like, travelling. So as you can see here, our centre back's travelling with it. He's carried his run on, and it's a good opportunity to go back to the goalkeeper. What our full back did brilliant there was, because the centre forward was cutting off past the goalkeeper, he's actually gone into the second centre back, which is, again, like what you always, when you're working kind of ideas and patterns, and then obviously a good drive, fixing the play, a good pass, and then a pass into, well, he's missed it actually, but a pass into the goal or a forward pass. So what you're looking for as well is, like, you're always looking for your players to adapt, because as soon as you add opposition, as soon as you add defensive players, then you're looking for players to be able to, like, adapt. And we always say to them, look, these are ideas. It might not look exactly like this, but these are ideas that you can use. And obviously, like, in this kind of focus of supply and playing around, that's really important. Again, here you'll see, as you can see, the opposition moving to this side of the pitch. Again, pass, carry your run on, all the spaces on the other side of the pitch. So it's just a good opportunity now. As you can see, a little bit of adaptation here because of how the centre forwards pressed. Obviously, the opposition know exactly what we're doing. But again, just a good opportunity to be able to try and switch the play. As you can see, it's a 3v3 now. All the spaces on the other side of the pitch. Good pass back into the goalkeeper. Now you'll see here, when we get possession here now we've got a 3v2. Can we utilise that 3v2? Can we take advantage of it, which we managed to do, and obviously managed to go forward, and we actually gave a free kick for that as well there. So again, just looking for players to adapt and to players obviously being able to do the ideas, do the patterns. But this time we've started here, different starting position of the opposition in possession. So obviously having that defensive shape, trying to be a bit compact, trying to win the ball back. And then again, from the previous game as well, having that attacking transition performance problem in mind. When now, I'll just pause it there, look now, so we've got control of it. Now, where we'd have probably lost this the other day in the game, so we're just talking to the players now about making better decisions. And as you can see here, plays back to the goalkeeper. Okay, and then we're able to get into our attacking shape just about within that 3 to 5 seconds. Again, good from the centre-back there, recognise that opportunity on the other side of the pitch, bit of a press, being able to adapt, and a good link-out pass there from the defensive midfield player, which then creates this 2v1 now with our fullback and our attacking midfield player. So again, like, you just are always looking for players to like have the patterns in the mind, have the ideas in the mind, but then being able to adapt in those types of situations when the opposition are pressing. So what we did from there was obviously keeping that kind of that theme going of playing around. Obviously in games like this you'll get chances to play through and obviously the other parts of it as well. But we just moved into some pressing scenarios that we come up against and effectively all the different types of presses that we use as well. So the first one we did was wide forward and centre forward pressing. So as you can see here, so our centre forward is on the right hand side of the picture on the edge of the box, and our wide forward is on the left hand side of the picture here. Now what we like to do in this situation is we like to push our defensive midfield player on, and we just get our centre back now to go and divide those two players, and our full back drops a little bit lower. And then we'll play into so effectively you set up to play out as a back three against a forward two, and we're just looking to work situations here like that, look, where we can get our centre back on it and play through, and then give the opportunities to play forward like that. So we just worked through these different scenarios again, having that idea of playing around and playing through. In terms of supply, but again, good attacking transition moment there where we've played back to the goalkeeper and got control, and then we can look to work and see if we can build and play out and play forward, and try and get these moments where we can get get overload situations on either side of the pitch, and using the space on the opposite side. So, okay, so second situation we went into here. So now I'll just pause that there. So now we're looking at two pressing again up front, but this time it's our centre forward, which is on the left-hand side of the picture on the edge of the box, and the current player who's pressing is actually the attacking midfielder. So that leaves our defensive midfield player free. And it's just opportunities where if the other midfielders aren't jumping onto him, and we do talk about that, if someone jumps onto him, can our attacking midfield player whose marks jumped, can he then come and get involved and maybe even set up as a double pivot? But we're always looking now, if that's the free player, can we get him on the ball in those situations? And as you can see here, a good little bit of movement, brilliant pass from the goalkeeper, again using the centre backs. Now we've got that 3v2 again on this side of the pitch. Can we utilise it as quick as possible? And a good little bit of individual play there from the fullback. Recognised he can't quite get that pass forward, so again, now can we use the space on the other side of the pitch? Probably could have switched it from that player there instead of going back to centre back, but we've managed to do it anyway. And from the goalkeeper, and again we've now got a 3v2 situation here if we can utilise it really quickly. I'm just talking to the attacking midfield player there about making runs either side of the opposition's player there. If I just move it back there, I'll just show you exactly what I mean. So I'm just talking now here, as the centre back's on it now, I'm just talking now about, so our attacking midfielder has moved in one direction to get on the ball, and can he come back the other way to receive that pass there? Like I said before, so if you can get your attacking midfielders to play in between opposition lines, perfect. But also helping them understand what happens if that's not quite the case. So getting into the final part of this week's coaching journey is our game plan for our up and coming game against Park City Red Wolves. And just to give you a little bit of background on Park City Red Wolves, they have a first team in Tennessee, in Chattanooga, who play in USL League One. And then obviously this is their academy system, which is based here in Utah. And effectively what they do is they have lots of different age groups, just trying to produce players for their USL League One team. to go on, and they've been really successful over the last few years. And one of my good friends runs their academy. So this was going to be, and obviously they handpick all their players and obviously select all their players and get them in and play lots of different tournaments all over the country and stuff. So it's a really good setup, and it was a game that we were all really looking forward to as well. So it's going to be another tough game, especially after the one we just had in Cambridge, the first one back. It was going to be a real tough game, especially they play a little bit differently as well in terms of what we are used to here in Utah. But a little bit of background in terms of, obviously we'll always set up in a 4-3-3 and then we'll adapt. Out of possession, majority of the time, they are going to be a 1-4-2-3-1. So, and they press in a very similar way to the Utah Avalanche in terms of where they let the ball go into the fullback and then put the pressure on from there. But in possession was going to be the interesting part for us in terms of the Red Wolves in possession and how we were going to deal with that out of possession, and because they set up in a 1-3-3-1-3 system with a bit of a box midfield, it's a bit of a 2 and a 2 in midfield, and they actually invert their fullback to create that box in midfield. So that was going to be something different and a different challenge for us to have a look at and defend against. But something that we were looking forward to, the challenge. And we just said to the boys as well about having, obviously it's always performance over result anyway, and trying to build on that really good first 20 to 25 minutes in the previous game. Can we build on that and at least double that up in terms of time, and better than that as well. And then obviously we talked about some of the performance problems we had in the previous game, and moved into this particular game plan, which I'll get to in a second. So again, reminder of the game model in terms of what we were looking for and what we were going after in terms of the 4 phases, and trying to control the opposition in those 4 phases of the game, and seeing if we can do a better job of that than the previous game, especially in those transitional moments. And especially in that attacking transition moment as well, where we win the ball back and can we keep it to kind of forge our own attacks as well. But and obviously trying to build on the metrics that we talked about in the review against Utah Avalanche, and can we get those targets a little bit higher than they were in that game as well, as we keep building up. So what we decided to do in terms of attacking organisation, in terms of the playing out part, was we were going to set up in exactly the same way as we did in terms of how we against Utah Avalanche. So in terms of our structure, we were going to have obviously our goalkeeper, our right centre back and left centre back supporting below. We're going to have a second line was going to be our 2 fullbacks and our defensive midfield player. A third line was going to be our 2 attacking midfield players, and then our fourth line was going to be our centre forward and our 2 wide forwards. And we talked again to the boys about those options of playing around, especially when the centre back's on it. If you can't progress down that side of the pitch, can you play into the fullback and either offer support below so they can play back to you, or the fullback can play it across the other side of the pitch, or can you carry your run on and obviously play to the fullback, carry your run on, like we worked in the session that I've just gone through, and then can we switch it across the other side of the pitch? And we just talked to the boys about being a little bit more patient in these scenarios, depending on the opposition's press. And if they were just pressing with one centre forward, can we just work the centre forward a little bit and have that little bit of patience to move the ball across the pitch and pick the right moments to try and play forward. One of the issues we do have a little bit in this team is like that. We try to go forward as quick as possible, whether that's the first pass from the goalkeeper, or even if we do get it across the pitch, then it's and I understand if the situation's right, the overload's right, can we go forward? But sometimes just picking that right chance, and that's obviously down to the decision making as well. So can we switch it across the pitch, or can we have a look at those opportunities to be able to play, or here like obviously playing through our defensive midfield player, which we worked on in the technical practice, and helping the defensive midfield player understand when he needs to support. And can we play across? Can the fullback play across the other side of the pitch as well? And then those moments of linking it through our central midfield player out to our fullback, and then obviously those opportunities to play through straight into our number 9, who can then either hopefully again, like, 'cause this was a bit of a performance problem, hopefully get control of the ball and obviously build from there. And play into our other players supporting him as well. So the game plan in terms of attacking organisation was pretty much the same, with that added emphasis of moving the ball across the other side of the pitch and having a little bit of patience, depending on the press, and picking the right times to go forward instead of being a bit eager to go forward, and seeing if we can move the opposition around a little bit more before we try to go forward. And again, having those moments of and relaying to the boys about the attacking transition moments as well. When we do win the ball back, of maybe playing backwards and sideways, in terms of being able to play back into our overload, get control of the ball, and then be able to get into these shapes and structures where we could actually do what we're actually quite good at in terms of the playing out. So from that, looking at the defensive organisation and kind of how we're going to set up in terms of our high press, as I mentioned in attacking organisation, and obviously in attacking organisation you get there through attacking transition. The transitions never change for us; they always stay the same. The targets are always the same. The kind of the languages is obviously always the same, and the kind of the emphasis on those are always the same as well. So defensive transition, always looking as much as possible to react really quickly, win the ball back within those 3 passes, and if we can't do that, can we force them back to their centre backs and their goalkeeper, so we can get organised or get into an organised state, and then set ourselves up to be able to press in a low area of the pitch, or ideally in a high area of the pitch. But like I mentioned before, those transitions don't change, and especially in and around defensive organisation and high press, if we do win it and get into that attacking transition from the last game, can we make sure that we're keeping possession and we're getting control of the ball and getting control of the game? And mention it all the time before, like transitions. If you control the transitions, you'll control the game. So let's have a look at kind of how we're going to set up in terms of our high press, and understanding how kind of the Red Wolves play and how their coach likes to operate. We'll always set up in the same way, and we'll kind of show you how we're going to try and deal with what we expect them to do. So our first structure is always the same in terms of we'll always be in our first line is always going to be our centre forward and our 2 wide forwards, high and compact, ready to press. If the Red Wolves set up like this in terms of a traditional 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1, then we're in perfect position to be able to do that. Our second line is obviously our attacking midfielder against their deepest line midfield player. Our third line is 2 centre midfield players against their high attacking midfield players, and then our fourth line is always the 2 centre backs and two full backs, narrow and compact. Trying to keep that distance between defensive line and attacking line of around 40 metres, and making sure that we're nice and compact vertically and horizontally. We fully expect Red Wolves to kind of operate in this kind of idea of their left back going into midfield and inverting and just creating that box in midfield. What's interesting about this kind of setup is when they do this from goal kicks is when the full back kind of inverts, they don't change kind of to go to a traditional back 3. They kind of keep the other 3 players in the defensive line kind of in the same setup as they might do in terms of if they're building out in a back 4. So what we decided to do is we decided to just get our right wide forward, so our white number 7 in that picture there, just to follow the opposition, the left back into midfield, and obviously into that inverted area and pick him up. We wanted our number 9, our centre forward, and our left wide forward, so our white number 11, just to come on to our number 9 is going to press the player who's got the ball, and then our number 11 or our left wide forward is just going to come on from a dividing position between the centre back and the full back onto the centre back, and obviously we're going to force down the side where the left back is inverted from. What they usually do as well is that they get their own wide forward to drop a little bit deeper and kind of take up that full back role as if they're building in a back 4, and that can confuse, and we do this a little bit in possession as well, that can confuse the opposition players of whether they go with that player or whether they stay on that defensive line, and that can be a bit of an issue. So we're just going to get our fullback to follow that left wide forward into that space and just man for man. And again, like from there as well, is like, so our fourth line will be so our first line will be a centre back and our left wide forward high and compact. Our second line will be our right wide forward and our central attacking midfield player. Third line will be 2 centre midfield players and that right full back dropping deep, coming a little bit higher to deal with that left wide forward of theirs dropping a little bit deeper, and then our fourth line will just be 2 centre backs and our left back being narrow and compact, so coming together as a bit of a back 3. So You can look at that as a bit of a different shape. We're just looking at it as a bit of a different structure. And again, same principles, trying to force the opposition to play wide and then create that net on that side of the pitch, so we're man for man and we can hopefully win possession there and keep it and get control. As you'll see there as well is obviously trying to keep them wide, trying to use the touchline as an extra defender, and then our left wide forward, so our white number 11 in that picture again, will just come onto more of a dividing kind of position in between goalkeeper and centre back. Obviously, he's ready to press it if they do try and switch it, and that is a huge emphasis as well, making sure all the players are in a good position where the opposition can't switch it into those 2 or 3 players on the opposite side of the pitch. But we know that's a difficult pass, so if we can get there and be nice and aggressive, then we'll kind of stop that happening. The only other thing we were a little bit concerned about was if they manage to get into a position like this where they're a little bit higher in the pitch from a goal kick, and obviously they can come together properly as a back 3 then, and that's when you can really see that kind of kind of 3-1-3-3 scenario, or a 3-2-2-3 kind of scenario, with the central centre back on the ball. What we were talking about, or what we were saying to our centre forward and our our left wide forward, so our white number 9 and white number 11 in that picture, is always trying to force the ball one way and always trying to force the ball into wide areas, and keep it going that way and try and win the ball in those wide areas, as you can see from that graphic there. Now, if they get into a position where they're actually really good at switching the play, and our front 2, if you want to look at it as a front 2, are struggling to deal with that, then we've got the option of high press number 4, which is a full press from wide or central areas, but we were going to go from a central area. So, and this is what's really important, guys, about you have different options in your pressing. And one of the beauties about it is having a full press, especially from central areas. It's no matter what kind of system that you might be in, or no matter what kind of structure you're in, that's always there and it's always available for you if you want to cause the opposition's more problems. So we were looking at kind of going from that position there, where we're kind of in a position where we're trying to force them wide. If we can't, then we're just going to do that full press from central areas, where our number 10 would come onto that central centre back, our number 6 would jump onto their midfield player, and our centre back would step into midfield, and obviously our left back would come across and make it nice and narrow and compact. And again, we're just trying to force them into those wide areas and just trying to win those balls back in wide areas, and again creating that net where it's a man for man, knowing that the hardest pass is on the opposite side of the pitch. So in that high press 4 and that full press from central areas, so our first line will be our centre forward, our left wide forward, and our central midfield player high and aggressive in that press. Second line will be our right wide forward and our central midfield player who jumps onto or one of our deeper line central midfield players who jumps onto their deepest line midfield player, or the defensive midfield player. And then the third line would be our centre midfield player and our centre back who stepped in onto that central midfield player. And then obviously the fourth line is the centre back and the 2 fullbacks, narrow and compact, and again trying to force wide. So we kind of we're coming into this game kind of understanding that we've got we're nice and set up, we're nice and organised, and we understand that these are the pictures that can happen, and this is how we're going to deal with it. And again, just making sure that we are on the transitions and trying to control those transitions as much as possible. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Obviously our website's live now, which is positionspecific.com, so everything that I'm talking about, all the individual stuff and team stuff's all on there for you to go and have a look at and use. If you're new to our YouTube channel, please make sure you subscribe. If you like the video, make sure you hit the like button, and if you've got any comments or questions, please make sure that you do ask them. We reply to everything, and we love engaging with you coaches around different things that you might have, or burning questions that you might have about some of the stuff that we're presenting. Coming next in week 8, we will do a game review of the Park City Red Wolves game that I've just talked about. We'll have a look at session number 7, which is all around defensive transition, and then we've got a game plan for our final game before we head to Hawaii against Utah USA. So got all that coming for you. So until next time, thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.